Hi, this is Trisha, your IELTS teacher, and I hope everyone is doing good today after the first week of all the IELTS training and all the slides that we went through and all the activities that we did. I really hope that now you're more comfortable in using the language, at least than before. So we will not push it. I mean, it's completely fine that you are still struggling or maybe not 100% sure, but it will come with time. Language is something that needs a lot of practice, and the more practice you do, the better you are going to be. So, with this being said, let us review today what we have done until now, right? We will review it all and we will see if we are able to do any activities as well. So, I'm going to share my screen and yep. So, majorly, what we did this time was grammar, right? So, we were majorly focusing on grammar. We will cover key concepts and skill that we used in week one. We will practice with a little bit of activities and exercises. And if you have any kind of questions or doubts, or if you want to clarify doubts, you can just put it up. So, the key topics that we covered in week one was introduction to basic English, and that was essential vocabulary. So, using essential vocabulary like how to introduce yourself, how to ask general questions, so on and so forth, right? Then we covered some common phrases in everyday conversation. In this, we also saw that we are using some dialogues, right? There was a dialogue practice. So we were doing that and we created different scenarios related to those dialogues. And we practiced on that. I really suggested you practice these dialogues with someone that you know, with your friends or family. Then it had understanding sentence structure. Then we were doing what sentences are, right? We covered sentence structures such as subject, verb, object. I told you about subject, verb, object, adjective, or adverb. Um, so those sort of things. What is a subject? Subject is something that is being talked about, right? That is your subject. What is an object? Object is something that we know who the subject is doing action on. What is a verb? Verb is that action that is happening on the object and that the subject is. So we covered all these things, and I think it was pretty much clear right by now because we practiced a lot of exercises also. Then we covered nouns and pronouns. We did a bit of nouns, we did a bit of pronouns, right? And we saw what nouns are: name, place, animal, things, basic names. All those things are nouns. We also saw abstract nouns, right? So, abstract nouns are something that we cannot touch, which are intangible versus tangible. All the kind of nouns are tangible, but there are things like thoughts, love, um, any kind of emotions or feelings, that's intangible. Any idea or anything, that's intangible. Pronouns. So pronouns are something that replaces a noun, so that the noun is not repeated every time in the sentence or in a paragraph or in any essay, right? So pronouns are I, you, he, she, they, etc. And we also saw what is the first person, what is a second person, and what is a third person. First person is like me, I, and we. I'm talking about us, we. That's a first person. Second person is when I'm talking about you, right? You are the second person for me. I am my first person. Third person is when you're talking about when you and I are having conversation and we are talking about he, they, she, it, etc. That's a third person, right? So we also discussed all of these things. In case you have any kind of doubt about these right now, just I think ping me over or like send a text or something or like put it in the comments and I'll be happy to solve your queries. Then we also did basic verbs and tenses, right? So we were doing helping verbs, which were also called auxiliary verbs. And then we did main verbs. Essentially, these are the only verbs that you need. Then we also did some tenses, which were the basic tenses, right? So we did present, past, future, how to use present, how to use past, how to use future. So present you are going to use when you are talking about what is happening in your daily life, or when what is happening in the present situation. Past you will use for, of course, past situation, what has already happened, right? And in future, what has not yet happened, but it is expected to happen. So these are essentially all the three tenses majorly, but then in further, when we will get to intermediate stages, we will also see that there are different kinds of tenses inside these tenses. Then we did some listening practice, right? We listened to some simple conversation. I think we listened to an audio, it was a long audio, and we had to guess the main idea, right? We also looked at the inference, right? How to infer, how to find out the main idea, what to expect, so on and so forth. We also went through some reading. So we did comprehension questions and answers. Again, inferring, inferring was one of the biggest parts. Vocabulary in context was there, if you remember, vocab in context. We also did antonyms and synonyms. Right? What else? I think this was pretty much it that we did, right? Then we also did a little bit of articles and prepositions. So prepositions is something that talk about place, time, etc. Articles are like a and the, if you remember, indefinite articles and definite articles. Indefinite articles are used with things that are not defined. Indefinite, it's indefinite. Definite articles are used with things that are defined, right? So we used that. Then we have building vocabulary. We used common words and phrases. We did reading skills. We practiced a little bit of reading. We did some hands-on reading as well. Also did some writing practice. We started with writing simple sentences, right? And if you remember, we also started doing complex, compound, all those kinds of sentences, right? We started making simple sentences with it. Then we, in fact, this is something that we will focus more on in the upcoming lessons. Then we wrote basic paragraph. We saw how to write basic paragraphs, right? So we started with the introduction sentence, how to explain it, and then finally the concluding sentences. I also gave you some linking words. We did a little bit of speaking practice where we learned about how pronunciation works of different vowels, different consonants, and diphthongs. Then we also did some speaking practice. We made some dialogues and then we practiced based on that. So let's see vocabulary and grammar review. So we learned about different sets of what is there in the grammar part, right? And just note that this is the very basic things, right? These are something that is really basic, which is your nouns, pronouns, verbs. You should have a basic idea of, you know, what are these things, right? So if you don't know these basic stuff, chances are you will probably miss out on intermediate grammar, right? So forming correct sentences is really important by using these grammar points. Then, when we were talking about and we were listening to short conversations, we were focusing majorly on the main topics, what is being spoken about, what is the major information that we need, who the speakers are, and again, what the key information is shared, right? So, what is the main topic? What is the overall idea? So, in a way, what is the summary? Who are these speakers? Who are the people in this conversation? And what is the key information shared, right? What are the different key things that are being spoken about? Then we also did some reading and we read a short passage and we sort of tried to summarize it, right? We summarized the main idea. We identified any new vocabulary words and tried to find their meanings, try to find vocabulary in context. And then we wrote a small paragraph on a topic. Uh, we tried writing. I gave you different examples of how you can write. What I gave you the homework as was that you had to take that exact topics and you have to start writing on yourself. You have to find topic sentences. You have to support those topic sentences with your details. And you need to write a concluding sentence which will sort of summarize it. And it should not be same as your topic sentence. So these were all the things that we were doing. We also did some speaking practice, right, where we were trying to speak fluently and clearly. That can only happen when our pronunciation is good, right? When our pronunciation is, we know how to pronounce words, we know how to pronounce vowels, we know how to pronounce consonants, so on and so forth, right? We were also engaging in conversation on a familiar topic, like we did daily activities, hobbies, interests, so on and so forth. In this lesson, in the upcoming lesson, we will learn and see more variety of speaking topics. We will cover a lot of speaking topics again. And that is pretty much it that we did. Before I open the floor for any questions, I would like to go ahead and do a little bit of reading test, right? It's not a test. It's just that I want to read a little bit, right? So let us see what we have here. So this is a small passage, and this will help us just review everything that we have done before. So in this small passage, it's about the development of London Underground Railway. Okay, so again, this passage is going to be about Underground Railway of London, right? So London Underground Railway System. That is the main idea behind it, right? So let me see. Okay. So in the first half of 1800s, London's population grew at an astonishing rate, and the central area became increasingly congested. Means something is growing, the population is growing, and it is becoming increasingly congested. So now we can figure out that congested means it's like a lot of people. In addition, the expansion of overground railway, overground means underground is something under the ground. Over the ground means normally over the ground, right? Like how our cars work. It resulted in more and more passengers arriving in capital. So what started happening was that the expansion of overground railways was also happening. So a lot of people were coming. However, in 1846, a royal commission decided that the railways should not be allowed to enter the city. So because it was getting congested, railways was not allowed to enter the city, the capital's historic and business center. The result was that the overground railway stations formed a ring. The areas within consisted of poorly built, overcrowded slum, and the streets were full of horse-drawn traffic. Crossing the city became a nightmare. So basically the whole situation was explained that more and more people were coming into London Central, and that is why a lot of slums were there. People started creating slums, people started creating temporary houses, right? Just so they could be nearer to the city. It could take an hour and a half to travel 8 kilometers by horse drawn carriage or bus. So, carriages were there at that time, and small buses were there, which were not really advanced. So, it took hours. Numerous schemes were proposed to resolve these problems, but few succeeded. So, a lot of schemes were proposed, but none of them really succeeded. So, this first paragraph, I can figure out the main idea was the problems in London due to overground railway. So we are in the first paragraph just discussing about these problems. Then, amongst the most vocal advocates for a solution to London's traffic problem was Charles Pearson, who worked as a solicitor for the City of London. Solicitor is basically like an advocate. He saw both social and economic advantages in building an underground railway that would link the overground railway stations together and clear London slums at the same time. So he said he proposed. So there was a proposal. In this paragraph, we are talking about proposal of underground railway. right? His idea was to relocate the poor workers who lived in the inner city slums to newly constructed suburbs and to provide cheap rail travels for them to get to work, right? So basically, he wanted to relocate these poor workers who lived in these slums because he wanted to clear it out. He created like small houses, like supported by government, and he transferred these slum people and gave them some sort of like, probably we have those government um, related schemes where people can get house or maybe they can rent house in cheap like cheaper. So Pearson's idea gained support among some businessmen, so it was funded. And in 1851, he submitted a plan to Parliament. It was rejected, but coincided with a proposal from another group for an underground connecting line, which Parliament passed. But it coincided. Coincided means uh, both of these plans were working side by side, and this worked, right? So basically, this is how we will try to figure out how to read properly. After this, you just need to figure out, after this, once you have understood everything, it would be really, really easy for you to go ahead and, just figure out the answers. This would make it super easy for you. Now I'm going to share my screen again on what we were doing before. And this is basically to let you guys have any kind of questions you have. Um, if you have any kind of doubts related to any exercises from the previous slides, any reading exercise that we did today, any sort of doubts or question, you can just ask. And I think that should be pretty much it. I would really like you to revise all the concepts that we did in the previous class. If you have something new, probably you did something new which was not discussed in class, sure, go ahead and bring it out, right? I have no problem. So just, I would say, revise everything because next week it's going to be a little bit more advanced. So a little bit more advanced classes, a little bit more advanced grammar concept, so on and so forth. So I hope you all understood what we were trying to do today. And I hope you have a nice day and I hope you are able to just revise whatever we have done. I'll see you in the next session.